who are not aware, NMIS is the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland. We are the national asset for manufacturing in Scotland, and happy to chat further with anyone who's interested in anything that we may well do. Key set of speakers for you today. So we have Billy Scott, who's the sector manager with SDS. Billy has over 20 years of experience. We have Terry Dillon, who's a senior program manager with SDS and has over 15 years experience. And Robert Bruce, who's a development specialist with Ingenuity, the Sector Skills Council. And Robert has over 30 years experience in education and skills. I'm Stuart McKinley. I'm the Skills Director at NMIS Manufacturing Skills Academy. And you can probably tell, have just as long experience as my esteemed colleagues round the table. For the benefit of doubt, appearances can be deceptive, but equality, diversity and inclusion is important to us. I'm currently the chair of Equate Scotland, and we work very well with AFBE Scotland. So while it might not appear, equality, diversity and inclusion is key to all of us. This webinar has been recorded and will be made on our available on our YouTube channel later on. Your microphones and your webcams will be turned off, and you can type any questions into the chat tool, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So I'm just going to give you some background as to roots into this and why it continues to be important. We're all probably aware of the skills and labour market shortages across much, if not all, of the OECD. We saw manufacturing bounce back quicker after Brexit and COVID than almost any other sector, and that's reflected in the pay awards for UK manufacturing and engineering continuing to outstrip the average of all other awards. People often think of this as just kind of related to engineering and manufacturing, but recent research from the Institute of Physics shows that actually this is spreading into the world of R&D and into academia as well. So it's across the piece that apprenticeships are useful, and they can be used obviously within employers, but also within academic institutes and others as well. Interestingly, some of the consequences we've seen from this these shortages are increasing quality problems. Because of the churn of people, we're seeing increase in health and safety incidents. And all of these, of course, lead to increasing insurance costs, which is something we all want to avoid because it adds extra cost to everyone. And interestingly, just last year, Michelle Bullock, who's the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia, said that actually sorting out some of these structural problems, this structural unemployment and the mismatches in the skills system would be better placed to spend money than actually the bank pumping loads of cash into the economy. So apprenticeships are obviously one of the key ways of solving these problems. These labour market shortages are not going to be for a long time. So apprenticeships are going to be increasingly more and more important as we have more and more people doing work-based activity. That's all I have to say as a headline. I believe it's Robert who's next up, so I'm now going to pass you over to Robert. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, all, and thank you very much, Stuart. A little bit about Ingenuity. I think to begin with, Ingenuity as an organisation are an employer-led skills charity. We exist to support the engineering and advanced manufacturing sector. And we've been working very closely with Skills Development Scotland in recent times to review the Modern Apprenticeship Programme in engineering. And we've recently been working over the last 2 years to create a new standard and framework for engineering. The reasons, very much as Stuart's expressed, we know the sector is changing rapidly through technology, automation, robotics, for example, and the new standard looks to bring some of that value back into the apprenticeship programme in Scotland and bring it a bit more up to date. In terms of, as I said, we're there to support the engineering apprenticeship employers and the economy that generates. And some of the background, for example, to the new programme of work is it started with us actually working very closely, as I said, with Skills Development Scotland. We had a significant employee participation in that activity, and we started that programme of work in March 2022. We did a survey with those that actually worked in the sector and the industry, including apprenticeships, and what we wanted from from the sector and the industry itself was actually some detail about actually the work tasks that people did and the work situations that they found themselves doing, so that what we really wanted to do was to ensure actually any new standard we were writing was coming from the very heart of the individuals who were at the very front, if you like, of taking forward activity within the sector itself. So we had 79, we had 296 responses to that survey. We had 79 detailed work tasks and work situations that were provided to us. And we did 2 employee workshops in March 2022. And that produced what we call 25 work situations based on the employee workshop contribution and feedback. These work situations were the basis for the new apprenticeship standard in Scotland. What did that look like? Well, the work situations are key themes. You can see them there. You know, much as you might expect, individuals sort of brought back stuff around maintaining engineering assets, diagnosing and resolving faults, all that type of activity that you might well expect in an engineering-based apprenticeship programme. We had 25 work situations. And then what we did was we also brought together, for example, an industry participation group and the formation of a technical expert group. We had 35 employers as part of that technical expert group. Their role was to have a look at these work situations and do some refinement work around that. We had 30 employers represented of all sizes from all geographical regions. So we had organisations from the borders to highlands and islands. We had large and small organisations, and below you can see on the slide some of those TEG members that were working with us. So for example, Rolls-Royce, BA Systems, Doosan Babcock, the Wood Group, SSC are just a few of these 30 employer technical expert group members who work with us in terms of this programme of work. What did we ask that technical expert group to do? Well, we had 5 meetings between May and October. That technical expert group actually was focused on the review of the work situations and the refinement of these to bring them to the final stage in terms of the content for this new apprenticeship programme. They helped us identify any gaps or work situations that we needed to develop that hadn't come back from the employee survey. They also helped us do some gap analysis equally, and we were also supported that work through what I would call some validation work of the content. So we went to an external source to validate that work to make sure actually that what was coming back from the sector and the industry was accurate. I do apologise if I can go back one. We also completed a meta skills profiling within that programme of work. And the technical expert group actually also agreed the pathways and the work situation clusters and the routes for the new apprenticeship programme. And there are 3 new apprenticeship programmes actually, those around maintenance and of engineering assets, those around actually what we call manufacturing and fabrication, and those around actually technical support. We did a wider consult. The technical expert group, also actually identified key company roles and profiles from within their own organisations. And there was a wider consultation of the standard and framework that we had written in October, and we had around 300 responses to that framework, and that's probably one of the largest responses that we've had to a new standard and framework that's been written for modern apprenticeships in Scotland. And then actually the technical expert group also actually confirmed the final content and pathways with us and agreed these. And then there was a new qualification undertaken by the Qualifications Design Group to underpin these new standards. That qualification is called the Diploma in Engineering. And also these new qualifications and standards were approved in March and April 2023. A couple of quotes from our TEG members about their work in the process. You can see there that actually they found it quite a rewarding experience working with this. And also that the modern apprenticeship, they felt that the technical expert group and the structure that was used to actually create the new standard and framework worked incredibly well. And I'll stop there, and I think I'm handing over to Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And I will just bring up some slides if that's okay. Just bear a moment. Excuse me. There we go. If someone can just let me know if we can see that, that would be great.
That's all fine. Yep, no problem.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you all for allowing me to come along and talk to you about the newly developed engineering apprenticeships and how they'll support yourself in the engineering industry. Really just to kind of start off with and talk about the breadth of the breadth of provision that we have across apprenticeships within Scotland. You're probably aware that we have three products: foundation, modern and graduate apprenticeships. The foundation apprenticeships are a partnership between school, colleges and employers, and these individuals, as you're no doubt aware, are not employed, but these programmes are really to support a kind of pipeline of development and engagement within kind of engineering within school. Modern apprenticeships and graduate apprenticeships are both employed status, and both individuals, the individuals within these programmes would be with you as well as at college or through training provider. And what I'm happy to do is to share these slides after. We've got links here to the engineering programmes that we have available. But what we want to talk to you, or what I want to talk to you today about, is essentially the newly developed models that Robert has mentioned to you. And Robert's went into a great deal of detail there around about kind of how we did it. But fundamentally, what we've been looking at over the last couple of years is to change the model of apprenticeship development, to have a very strong focus on employer and employee input to that. We see that within the best models across the world and the really high-performing kind of work-based learning models. And what we intend to do with this model is make sure that we gather that employer requirement and make sure that we understand and start with that in the centre of our developments, but recognising that by taking an integrated approach to that and working with qualification bodies or training providers and broader industries, including different sector skills councils or trade unions, to kind of make that as robust a process as possible, and making sure that as we go through that process, that any of the activities that we develop, that we identify, that they can be developed into qualifications, that can be assessed appropriately, they can then subsequently be delivered within the environments, both within a workplace or within a college or training provider that can do it. So hopefully by taking this kind of system-wide approach, what we're able to do is to develop apprenticeships that are fit for purpose, that are deliverable and achieve what employers and industry need them to achieve. But moving on to the newly developed approach that Robert's been talking about, essentially we looked at the entire footprint of engineering that we have across this level and the existing apprenticeships within this SCQF level 6. And what we're really keen for ingenuity and to understand more broadly is what are the functions of these roles at this level that industry needs and needs supported with, and how can we build apprenticeships to support that. So looking broadly across that significant engagement that Robert and the team did with industry and a range of other stakeholders, what we've arrived at is 3 new engineering apprenticeships. This is engineering asset lifecycle maintenance, engineering manufacturing and fabrication, and technical support. And these were worked through with those groups that Robert has mentioned and make sure that we understood the functions of that employers need. So whether it's maintenance engineering or manufacturing or process engineering or fabricating and welding, we have apprenticeships for that. And one of the reasons that these will look slightly different in terms of some of the engineering provision that's out there. Historically, we've had things like land-based engineering, like rail engineering and others. But what we're really keen to do is to make sure that we focus apprenticeships down on not necessarily where they happen, but actually the context and the function of the work that happens, because we recognise that the apprentices are jobs and that those individuals will spend 80%, probably more than that, 80% of their working time within the workplace. And if that will provide the context and the application for the learning. And we'll talk about some of that in a wee moment. But essentially, kind of what we hope that this approach takes is an approach which enables this recognition of shared or common competence. Stuart talked around about kind of some of the challenges in the labour market, and we recognise that actually the labour market for the last couple of years and probably into the next couple of years is likely to continue to be volatile. We don't know which sectors are growing, which sectors are shrinking, what the future may hold. But what we want to do is to be able to recognise that if an individual has a common skill or competence, such as maintenance engineering or production engineering, that actually they should be able to take that skill and build upon it, so that it's not necessarily locked into the kind of first area that they work within, but they have a recognition that actually they can build upon these skills and utilise some of the skills that they have developed through their apprenticeship in other contexts. What we also look to do is to kind of make sure that actually by creating this broad mapping of the skills and the functions within that area, to begin to kind of think about how we can then use the components that we've developed through this process to support things like upskilling and reskilling. But additionally, what we hope this does is plays to the strengths of the skills system, and in terms of kind of SDS, looking at this national programme, but also working with some of the sector bodies, not just Ingenuity, but PITO or EU Skills and others, to understand how we might integrate and include some of the kind of sectorally specific or sub-specific areas that are included within that. But additionally, and within these apprenticeships, it's worth mentioning that all of the new apprenticeships that we've developed contain meta skills. And these are skills that you would recognise, and again, the links in the document I have to send on. But things like problem solving, communicating, collaborating, sense making, all of the skills that individuals need to navigate and to be more navigate the world of work and be more personally effective. And these are all integrated into apprenticeships, not in a way where an individual gets taught them for an afternoon, but thinking about how they utilise these skills as they perform the functions that you need them to do. And finally, within these new apprenticeships, these apprenticeships are the first ones to include a discrete and single unit around about sustainable practice. That was at the request of industry, and that's something that we're absolutely keen to do, and something that Paul Sheeran, as Chief Executive of Scottish Engineering, has been at the forefront of pushing forward. We're also kind of looking at kind of how that might reduce waste and increase value, but also thinking about how, through working with some of the other bodies I mentioned, that we may be able to include elements such as kind of whether it's hydrogen or carbon capture or a range of different areas. And we would do that through the format or through the structure of the apprenticeship. And this is a very simplified model in terms of kind of how the function of the apprenticeship would look. What we have within all of these apprenticeships is a unit performing engineering operations or a similar qualification that enables both you employers to understand that actually there is an element there of safe and common practice. Anybody working within your engineering environments or production environments will be safe to be there and will be safe for themselves and for their colleagues. Additionally, with each of these pathways I mentioned, whether it be fabricating and welding or maintenance, there will be a discrete competence-based qualification which will relate and train those or support those individuals to gain the functional skills that you need. But what we also heard from employers is that that's really useful, but also to enable those individuals to apply those skills in a range of different ways, it would be really useful to include a knowledge qualification. And working with that technical expert group, but also the engineering skills leadership group, we've agreed a range of qualifications that are essentially kind of utilising national certificates at SEQF 5 or 6, or potentially the HNC's SEQF level 7. And this supports employers across the range of opportunities and the range of roles. But what we didn't want to do within there is to create qualifications that either create a barrier to entry or completion of these, but also make sure that they support employers and individuals to gain the knowledge that they do that relates to the role that they have. And the final part of that is around about the optional enhancements, and that's where we can bring in additional units. And this is where this will be a bit of a live apprenticeship, where we can bring in different units or different functions that actually might require individuals to work within specific areas of engineering or develop specific skills, whether that's in relation to power or kind of different areas. And we can include these in because we recognise that some sectors and some employers will need specific skills, but they might not necessarily be needed across all employers. So rather than include them within the core and kind of misuse your employees' time and your time and kind of public funds, make sure that they're available through that programme and that those that need them can use them. And at the end of this programme, we would expect, undertaking these qualifications and this learning and spending time in the workplace with yourselves, that we would have these individuals job and occupational competent at the end of that programme. But that was a very quick run through. If you want to find out more around about kind of the apprenticeships that we're beginning to offer, or you wish to get involved in terms of kind of some of the, whether it's engineering or future apprenticeships, we have a range of ways for you to do that, and you can find how we do that within the apprenticeship.scot website. So we would love to, and part of our key process is that we speak to employees, as Robert had mentioned, making sure that we understand from them what they do, where they do it, what's important within that. And then through engaging with employers and broader industry groups to validate that information and to sense check it and to make sure it contains all of the pieces that you need, all of the detail, all of the content. And then finally, if you're unable to support that, we do have a broader consultation and a public consultation for all apprenticeships, so that if it's something that you wish to participate within, there is an opportunity, but your time constraint, there is an opportunity to do so. So kind of happy to kind of finish there and answer any questions at the end of the call if that works for people. Thank you. I think I might be handing back to Stuart.
Oh. So thank you everyone for your presentations. We've probably gone through that relatively quickly. I'm also conscious that we have a fairly small-ish group of people actually watching the show. So Debbie, I'm going to go a wee bit Raj here, and I'm going to suggest that if anyone has any questions from the audience, just put your hand up, and then we can maybe just pass them out, and we will attempt to answer your questions. As far as I know, none of us bite. We might look pretty fierce, but we're actually pretty friendly. So yeah, have any questions or thoughts on apprenticeships as a route into engineering? We are more than happy to hear your questions. No questions from the audience? I'm assuming everyone can hear me, not just talking into a vacuum. Okay. Well, I wonder, in the absence of any questions, if any of the panel have anything more that they would like to add. Terry, Robert, or maybe Billy would want to give some context and some thoughts around about it.
Well, I'll let Billy come in. Oh.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Terry. Just like to suggest how buoyant the sector is just now. I knew you mentioned that in the introduction there, Stuart, but we've seen significant growth, and we're expecting future significant growth in particular subsectors. Shipbuilding, for example, it's as buoyant in Scotland as it has been for about 20 years. So you've got the big companies like BAE Systems and Babcock who are recruiting hundreds of apprentices now, but all of their suppliers are requiring to keep pace with that. So as the big shipbuilders are constructing more and more ships, they are needing more components built, so their suppliers are also growing and therefore also recruiting apprentices. An exciting development which Scotland really does keep a secret is the space sector. And I'm just throwing it out there because any opportunity I get, I'd like to tell an audience that Scotland does have a thriving space sector, and Scotland manufactures or designs and manufactures more small satellites than anywhere else in Europe. And look, who knew that Scotland is a space capital of Europe? And we do have end-to-end capability. So we're designing the small satellites. We're actually building the launch vehicles now. At some stage later this year or early next year, there will be launches from Scotland. So Scotland does have an end-to-end capability in the space sector. And just to come back to Terry's point about the makeup of the new apprenticeships, it's vitally important that somebody completing an engineering apprenticeship will have the capability to transfer from subsector to subsector. So as the space sector grows, and we might see a decline, for example, in oil and gas, it's important that someone who's completed that qualification can actually transfer from one subsector to another, so that with a wee bit of sector-specific training, an engineering technician in oil and gas should be able to transfer to, for example, the space sector or aerospace. So I think that's a key thing that Terry and Robert and their teams have done, is build in that transferability to the programmes, so that a successful apprentice becoming a technician can actually take their skills to any other subsector which is in growth, and to go from maintaining an asset like an oil rig to maintaining an asset like a nano satellite. So I think that phenomenal flexibility is a huge step forward for the new standards and frameworks in engineering. Yeah. So that's my piece. Plug for space.
I'll maybe just follow up on that then to say I did have 2 meetings with space employers last week, and interestingly, one of the people I was speaking with started as a modern apprentice with the company at the age of 16, and now at 24 is their launch manager. So, you know, these routes do create genuine opportunities for people. I think in terms of those kind of labour market, and Billy touched on the oil and gas sector there, and you know, I think Terry had touched on the unpredictability of the sector, the volatility of the engineering sector. You know, there are some misconceptions and misperceptions out there, and people generally think of oil and gas as a declining industry, and on the whole it is. But actually, due to the age demographics in the workforce, they are heavily recruiting for the next 3 or 4 years. So I think there are a number of reasons for getting into apprenticeships and using apprenticeships if you're not already doing so. And of course, part of that extends into the graduate apprenticeship that, again, was touched on through the session. But in general, I would say that apprenticeships are really good for both attracting and retaining talent at a time when we are all desperately short of good people.
And if it's okay, Stuart, I can just come in on that, if that's all right.
Sure, yeah.
And it was really just to pick up on something Billy says, and Robert had mentioned, and in terms of kind of looking at the engagement that we had through this activity, and kind of both Robert and Billy have mentioned some of the really big companies that we've worked for. But one of the things we're really conscious of as we went through this process is to make sure that this apprenticeship works for all employers, because we recognise that while the large employers are, employ a significant number of individuals and take on a significant number of apprenticeships, the vast majority of Scotland's businesses and manufacturing and engineering businesses are small businesses. And one of the things that we're really keen on is to make sure that actually these apprenticeships work in that space, and that they develop the skills that individuals need, because especially we recognise that small businesses do things which might be more bespoke or in a particular way. And actually part of through the assessment strategies, and I'll not get too technical on it, but that Robert and the team work through that, is to make sure that actually these aren't pieces that are dependent and you need a massive infrastructure to support. It's around about kind of how we use this programme and how small businesses can use this programme to kind of really get the skills that they need through the flexibility that we've mentioned in terms of the programme. So it's around about kind of supporting those small businesses to get the skills that they need, but also creating that balance so that if individuals or if anything happens across that an individual wishes to or moves or relocates, that they can transition into other and create that kind of continuous pool of resource within the engineering and the subsectors of it. So hopefully kind of while we have engaged with a lot of large employers, it's certainly kind of at the forefront of their mind through this, that these are apprenticeships that need to work for all of Scotland's employers.
Final call for any questions. Anybody who doesn't want to put their hand up, or they can quite happily put something in the chat box and we'll answer. Oh, we have a question from Neil. Can you unmic Neil, please? Neil, do you want to just introduce yourself and then come with your question or your comment? Debbie, Laura, can you? Maybe I can do it from here.
That should be you now.
That's me. Good morning. I'm Neil Borthwick, Engineering Manager at Soapworks in Queensley Industrial Estate, and I'm big into apprenticeship schemes. I did my apprenticeship through the army, and the way the army grasps engineers at the very early stages, and then they mould their engineers to do what they have to do in that kind of capacity. So that's how I've came about engineering. I left the military 10 years ago, and it's manufacturing. So I'm big into it. And Soapworks, we're coming through that kind of journey where we're actually looking now to bring in an apprentice. So it's manufacturing in a soap factory. We've got like older technologies and kind of newer technologies, but it's very niche. And when you say things like BAE, like systems, Babcock, and then we talk about space and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, there's going to be so much that I can do if I framework in here, but it is going to be niche. So my question really is, from the presentation this morning, that's been very, very useful, and there's a lot of good information on that. Where would my next step be? Who would I get in touch with to speak so that I can explain a bit about our business, and so that we can look at a specific framework for someone, because I would like someone to come into Soapworks, and but I would always be aware of what I would term career fouling. So when you're talking about bigger companies out there like Rolls-Royce or these kind of ones, we're just like a standalone factory, and we're not like the big players at all. So my concern would be to ensure that the education, the knowledge and the experience that person was going to be gaining was going to be valuable for there, because that's the start of their kind of career. So that's where I would have my kind of concern, so that I'm giving them the best chance to start with. But as I say, we're very niche. It's not like shipbuilding, it's no oil and gas. It's very, very specific, and it'd be that there that I would need to say my protocol. Who would I get in touch with to get the kind of to do the kind of next steps?
Neil, that's a great question, and you made some great points there, and thank you for coming on and being first. Always the most difficult, of course, to be first to put your hand up, so appreciate that.
I can't sit quiet.
Huge fan of apprenticeships, and I see Terry's put his hand up to answer your question.
Hi, Neil.
No,
thank you for coming along, and thank you for the question. Point number one, I can certainly help you with that. I'll take your details after the call and pass your details on to a member of our employer engagement team that will be in touch and can talk you through some of the options and how you might kind of find the apprenticeship that's right for you. Probably some of some of what you mentioned within your point are exactly some of the concerns that we were looking at, particularly through this apprenticeship. And conscious that historically there were almost a kind of subdivision of kind of some of the functions of engineering that we had within our apprenticeship portfolio. But what we were really keen to do with this one is to make sure that actually there is a breadth within it, and that the options that we create within that provide a range of employers, large or small, with kind of what they need. So you could do something like that, as you say, kind of whether if it's production or it's maintenance within that environment, that you could take one of those units, or the individual could be put onto those, but also think about whether that's, actually the kind of knowledge components, mechanical engineering, or a range of different activities. Through that discussion with both the employer engagement advisor and the training provider that they put you onto, you can explore those options. And one of the things that we're really keen to do is to kind of make sure that, and I touched upon it earlier, that actually those training providers and the structure that we've created within the apprenticeship allows you to identify and to validate the skills that you need within the workplace. So it's around about the skills that you need and the levels of performance that you're requiring your team to work to. That actually we'll be very keen to kind of make sure is reflected within that and part of the discussion that you have with the training provider that supports you in that. But by all means, what I'll happily do after this call is I'll get your details off of Stuart and the team, and I'll pass your details on to our employer engagement team who will be in touch, Neil, if that's okay.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Neil, thanks very much. I see Billy's posted something in there that might be useful to you as well, and certainly if it's okay, I'll ask our BD team to get in contact with you to see what NMIS can do as the national asset. A lot of the employers we deal with are SMEs as well, so I'm happy to do that if you're okay with that.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart.
Any more for any more? Any more questions, thoughts, observations? Going, oh, Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. It was just to say, actually, it's just useful to note, actually, we've probably got the highest apprenticeship numbers in training at the moment than we've ever had. So, for example, we've got over 1,600 starts this year, and that's the highest volume of apprentices in the last 10 years in engineering. And I think that's reflective of the sector and the industry and our employers and how they're embracing the apprenticeship programme and how they see the value of apprenticeships in Scotland, particularly in our sector, and about how they're beginning to meet the needs of their industry. And just to pick up on Terry's point and Billy's point equally around actually the kind of high level kind of standards that we've written, and I think it goes back to Neil's statements around these are written specifically at a very high level, and they really are designed to align to employers' needs, whether that be a large corporate organisation as described BAE Systems, Rolls-Royce, or for that matter, those individual small to medium enterprises that are working successfully across what I would call, other geographical regions of Scotland, from those in the borders, the Highlands and Islands. So I think in general terms, what we are seeing in the engineering sector is a level of support for apprentices probably that we've not seen in recent times. And I think the sector and the industry know that the sector and the industry is changing somewhat. We know that technology, robotics, automation, these are all impacting on our sector and industry and will continue to do so going forward. And as I said, we hope that these new standards that we've written actually have the ability to actually incorporate some of that movement and change.
Thanks, Robert. I'll just add one comment on there, which I think is useful. There's a lot of conversation around about how robotics might be doing away with people's jobs. I think we tend to see the opposite. And I think we see with the increase in robotics and engineering, it's interesting. It's not statistically significant. I guess it's not factually or evidentially proven, but interesting to see that, certainly as far as I'm aware, the number you quoted be the largest number of starts in the last 20 years, Robert, at a time when we're seeing increasing number of robots in use. Okay, last chance for anyone with any questions, comments, observations. If there aren't any, I will thank everyone, including the panelists, for your time. And I hope you all have a great Scottish Apprenticeship Week and go out and recruit lots of apprentices and have a great future. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.